This week on PoorCenter, hockey and basketball seasons barrel toward the playoffs, NASCAR drivers barrel into each other, and Lamar Jackson becomes the new Aaron Rodgers. All this and more next on PoorCenter. One man, every sport, every week. This is PoorCenter. Hello everyone, welcome back to PoorCenter, the only YouTube show with the right mixture of talent and insanity needed to cover every sports story that matters. I'm your host, Kyle the Addict, and today we've reformatted the show as a top 10 list. Is it a sacrifice to the algorithm gods? Is it just me trying to make the show easier to write, research, and edit? Is it a little bit of both? It's probably a little bit of both. Remember, only God can judge me. And with that, here are the top 10 most important sports stories from the last week. Enjoy! Or don't. I'm not your mom. Either way, don't forget to like and subscribe to help my channel grow into an unstoppable powerhouse. Thank you for watching, and here goes nothing. Number 10, a tale of two sackings. The club football world took a break this week for some internationals. There were some Euro 24 qualifiers and a boatload of friendlies, but the real main story to come out of the sport this week was a pair of people getting fired from their jobs. One of these was not very surprising at all. After his "this team sucks, has always sucked, and will always suck" rant from last weekend, Antonio Conte has left Tottenham Hotspur by mutual consent. The only surprising thing about this was that it took a whole week for them to sort it out. The other firing was a much bigger shock and basically set the whole football internet on fire. Julian Nagelsmann received a surprise pink slip from German giants Bayern Munich this past Friday. This came completely out of nowhere. Bayern have won the last 10 Bundesliga titles in a row and seem to have fired Nagelsmann as a panicked overreaction to a single loss. They were defeated 2-1 a week ago by Bayer Leverkusen and have dropped to second place in the league. But they're only trailing first place Borussia Dortmund by 2 points. And their next opponent is Borussia Dortmund, and Bayern will be at home. Bayern has yet to even lose a home game all season long. And if they win, they'll be back in front by 2 points. So this firing ranges from either psychotic to nearly inexplicable. Now, according to the press, Nagelsmann was apparently a bit of a dick to some key players, including legendary goalkeeper Manuel Neuer. And frankly, it doesn't really seem to matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, since during Bayern Munich's run of winning 10 titles in a row, they have been through 8 freaking head coaches already. Maybe they should just save a Euro and let Twitter run the team. Hell, I'll do it. I've won the league in FIFA loads of times. How hard can it be? Number 9, NHL players versus Pride Night. A small handful of aging, mediocre NHL players have decided to lose their minds during their team's Pride Nights over the last week. Several teams wanted to have their players wear rainbow-colored Pride jerseys during the pregame warm-ups to show LGBT fans that they're welcome in hockey arenas. But apparently, this was too much to ask for San Jose Sharks goalie James Reimer and the Stahl brothers, Eric and Mark, who both play for the Florida Panthers. These 3 men have decided that wearing jerseys with rainbow logos during warm-ups goes against their Christian beliefs. Eric and Mark amusingly stated during their self-righteous tweet that this is what they were going to do and they didn't want to talk to anybody about it. Which is cute. Have you guys ever met the media? Or, the internet? James Reimer, for the record, is one of the very worst goalies in the league. He literally grades out as about the 48th best keeper in the league no matter how you slice it. And the Stahl brothers are both in their late 30s and have had pretty mediocre seasons. In other words, none of the league's actual stars have had any issue with the Pride jerseys at all. Both the Sharks and Panthers posted tweets celebrating their team's Pride Nights, essentially telling their players to go fuck themselves. Delicious. The funniest part came when Eric Stahl decided to try to deny that he had ever worn a Pride jersey before in his entire career. Except, there's photographic evidence from 2 years ago when he wore one playing for the Montreal Canadiens. When he was told by the press that there was photographic evidence of him being full of shit, Stahl doubled down and continued his denial. Yup, sounds like a Christian conservative to me. The Stahl brothers may be onto something, though, since the Panthers are going to need the power of Christ in order to get them into the playoffs. They've lost 4 in a row and trailed the Penguins for the last playoff spot by 3 points. The same day the 2 douchebags announced that they were skipping Pride Night, the Maple Leafs crushed them 6-2. And the Lord said, "Ha ha, enjoy holding this L, you homophobic cowards." That's definitely in the Bible somewhere. You can trust me, you don't have to look it up. Lamar Jackson, the NFL's new most annoying player. The NFL world rolled its collective eyes yesterday when Lamar Jackson posted a series of tweets telling the world that he had asked his team, the Baltimore Ravens, to trade him back in early March. There's a lot going on with this situation, and it's kind of dragged on for a few years, so let me break it all down for you. Lamar here is trying to get himself a contract in the same ballpark as Deshaun Watson's deal with the Browns. Deshaun Watson signed a deal with Cleveland that is a 5-year, $230 million contract. But the dollar amounts, while eye-watering, are not the real problem here. The problem is that Watson's contract is fully guaranteed, 100% guaranteed. So even if he sucks or gets injured, Watson gets all $230 million. The Ravens have made it pretty clear that they are just not going to match those terms. They have absolutely dug their heels in. And it's not that hard to see why. For one thing, the Ravens have made it pretty clear over the years that they are perfectly capable of winning a Super Bowl without having a superstar quarterback like Lamar. They've won 2 Super Bowls with Trent Dilfer and with Joe Flacco under center. So they don't really need a good quarterback in order to win the whole thing. And secondly, Lamar hasn't actually managed to play a full season in 2 years. In 2021, he suffered an ankle injury that knocked the Ravens out of the playoffs entirely. And last year, he sustained a knee injury, which, while it didn't stop the Ravens from making the playoffs, with backup Tyler Huntley under center, they were not able to get past the Bengals and lost immediately in the first round. The other issue is that Lamar was made a restricted free agent this offseason. Now, what the hell does that mean? I'll tell you what that means. It means that other teams are free to offer Lamar Jackson a contract, but the Ravens have the right to match any offers. And if the Ravens decline to match, the other team would have to send over 2 first-round picks to Baltimore, on top of meeting Jackson's enormous guaranteed contract demands. So, consequently, no team has come forward to make Lamar an offer. Could be collusion, and, he probably thinks it's collusion. Or it could just be that teams don't want to guarantee top dollar for a guy who's a glass cannon. In other words, Jackson really doesn't have a lot of leverage here. He could refuse to play the last year of his contract, but that's not going to convince teams that he's reliable, Coach John Harbaugh of the Ravens, yesterday after he was told about Jackson's tweets, confirmed that he still expects Lamar to be the starting quarterback for the Ravens next season. So we can expect this saga to continue annoying everyone for months to come, since the Ravens are under no obligation whatsoever to cave to either his contract demands or his trade request. Which is just great. Maybe he and Aaron Rodgers can have themselves a boxing match. It would probably cause them less brain damage than playing football. Number 7, the Cavs' big Brooklyn comeback. The NBA saw one of its wildest finishes of the season last Thursday as the Cleveland Cavaliers pulled off an outrageous comeback on the road in Brooklyn. The Nets, overall a pretty solid team, were up 7 points with 3 minutes left to play and managed to blow it in spectacular fashion. The Cavs got a quick 4-point swing on a couple of awful turnovers by Brooklyn. The Nets simply coughed up the ball twice in the last minute and a half, leading to a pair of easy buckets for Karis LeVert and Donovan Mitchell. With around 15 seconds left on the clock, Dorian Finney-Smith was rattled by a double team and hilariously turned the ball over again, which forced the Nets to foul Mitchell. Mitchell was given 2 free throws, and he sank the first one. Then he missed the second one, but in a Herculean feat of athleticism, he managed to grab the rebound from his own miss, but he missed the lay-in, leading to a mad scramble that resulted in LeVert getting the ball, grabbing it and throwing the ball in a magnificent cross-court pass to a wide-open Isaac Okoro, who drilled the corner 3 and gave the Cavs an utterly improbable road victory. This put Cleveland firmly on track to make the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, and the first time without LeBron James on their team since 1998. They've sure come a long way from that hilarious Comic Sans letter that their owner sent out when LeBron left them the first time. Yeah, that's right, Dan Gilbert. Nobody's forgotten that shit. As for Brooklyn, this was an awful, tragic nut punch loss for a team that has lost 6 of their last 7 games. But they can take heart knowing that 4 of their final 7 games are against some of the very worst teams in the league. So it's almost impossible for them to miss out on the playoffs. Almost. Number 6. The Boston Bruins clinch the division. The Boston Bruins beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 2-1 this week, and in so doing, they have locked up their division as they continue to completely destroy the league. This team is well on track to put together a truly legendary regular season, and are pretty much certain to win the President's Trophy as the league's best regular season team. I mean, shit, they already clinched a playoff berth 2 weeks ago, which is crazy with a month and a half left in the season. Boston is on pace to have the best regular season of any NHL team ever. They have the second most goals in the league, and they have given up by far the fewest goals in the league. They've only lost 6 home games all year, 3 of which were in overtime. So that's only 3 regulation home losses all season. That's pretty nuts. Unfortunately for Boston, all of this virtually guarantees that they will not be winning the Stanley Cup this year. Let me explain. The last 9 President's Cup winners have failed to win the Stanley Cup in a row. The last team to do it was the 2012-13 Chicago Blackhawks. And only 2 President's Cup winners have won the cup in the last 2 decades. So congratulations to one of Boston's playoff opponents. It's not clear exactly who's going to be knocking them out, but it is pretty certain that the Bruins are going to fail at some point in the postseason. Sorry, Boston. I don't make the rules. Number 5. NASCAR turns to the right. This Sunday, NASCAR staged their first road course of the year at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. This was the first of 6 road course races that NASCAR will be running this year, and they even invited F1 veterans Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button to join the party. NASCAR used to only have 2 road course races per year at Sonoma and Watkins Glen for the longest time, but they've been adding more and more road courses every year since around 2018, which, oddly enough, is around the same time that Drive to Survive debuted on Netflix, introducing the American audience to Formula One. But that's probably just a coincidence. Maybe. Anywho, the race featured a super close battle throughout as Tyler Reddick and Willie Byron fought for the lead. Unfortunately, the race ended up as a classic NASCAR wreckfest. It was on track to be a great race until Brad Keselowski wrecked with a few laps to go, sending the race into its overtime shenanigans. Damn it, Brad! There ended up being 3 overtime restarts during the end of this race as drivers became more and more aggressive, and every single time, Tyler Reddick took the lead until it finally stuck and he was able to drive it home for his first victory of the season. By the 3rd restart, there was yet another wreck, and this time, NASCAR just chose to ignore it. They went from driver safety first to, oh my god, can we please just go home already? Ross Chastain ended up finishing 5th, despite the fact that at one point during one of these overtimes, he was in 28th place and facing the wrong way. That's a hell of a drive from the Melon Man, even if, he may have been a little bit responsible for one of those wrecks. Just a little. Number 4, UCLA versus Gonzaga, Part 3. This past Thursday, the UCLA Bruins staged one of the best games of the whole NCAA tournament against a familiar foe, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. The teams had played each other twice before in the tournament. In 2006, UCLA broke Gonzaga's heart and made Gonzaga legend Adam Morrison cry. In 2021, Gonzaga would get their revenge. Both times, both of these teams would end up going on to get murdered in the final. Womp womp. So the stage was set for this best-of-3 tiebreaker, this time in the Sweet 16. This game was awesome because it contained a true unicorn, a double choke job. Each team tried its best to blow this game. First up was UCLA. The Bruins went into halftime with a 13-point lead, but managed to throw it away with a comical 11-minute scoring drought toward the end of the second half. They failed to score any shots other than free throws during this time. 11 minutes? There's only 20 minutes per half? Somehow, UCLA almost managed to pull the win out anyway when they suddenly remembered where the basket was with a minute and a half to go. And they went on an incredible 10-1 run to take the lead with almost 12 seconds left. And then it happened. Gonzaga's Julian Strother took a stupid, dumb shot from almost mid-court, and it went in, because of course it did. UCLA had around 6 seconds from this to take back the lead, but they screwed it up, turned the ball over, and that was that. I want to feel bad for the Bruins, but 11 minutes, guys. 11 freaking minutes. Anyway, Gonzaga would go on to get murdered 2 days later in the Elite Eight when UConn absolutely crushed them by 28 points. Gonzaga's best player, Drew Timme, stupidly got himself into foul trouble minutes into the second half, and the team fell apart faster than my hopes and dreams. Maybe next year, Gonzaga. Number 3, a disaster class in Dallas. Back to the NBA. At the start of the week, the Dallas Mavericks were on track to at least make the playoffs. Then they lost 4 games in a row, and 2 of those losses were particularly embarrassing. The Dallas Mavericks somehow managed to lose 2 games to the Charlotte Hornets, one of the worst teams in the league, by design because they're tanking. Also, they're in the process of being sold by their owner. This guy, maybe you heard of him. Despite this, the horrible Hornets managed to beat a Dallas team that went all in on winning this season. At the trade deadline, back in February, the Mavs acquired former flat earther Kyrie Irving in a trade with Brooklyn. This was a pretty costly trade for the Mavericks. They sent back a pair of pretty good players and a first rounder for Irving. And Irving's in the last 6 months of his contract, so he's essentially a rental. They figured he would pair with Luka Doncic, they would make a deep playoff run, Irving would re-sign in the postseason, and everybody would live happily ever after. But this happily ever after has pretty much turned to ash after the Mavericks have basically spiraled out of playoff contention. They are now stuck in the 11th seed with 7 games left to play. They won big last night against the Indiana Pacers, but it could be too little too late. Dallas can still make the playoffs as the bottom of the Western playoff picture continues to be a clusterfuck of mediocre teams, but can they stop the rot and actually get some wins? I'd tell you, but my crystal ball delivery was delayed by Amazon. Quick, Kyrie, go back to saying the earth was flat. It's your only hope. Number 2, Trout versus Ohtani. Man, the World Baseball Classic was fucking awesome. Last Monday, Japan made a miraculous comeback against Mexico to get into the final against the US of A. Japan had been trailing most of the game, but were able to win 6-5 after a dramatic back-and-forth contest with lots of super late lead changes. Japan was able to win in the end, getting the only walk-off of the entire tournament. That's pretty incredible, and it was the most dramatic game of the tournament, bar none. Until the very next night when Japan played against us. This game ended up not being quite as epic to the end, but it had the greatest moment of the tournament. Japan was able to hold on to a 3-2 lead for the whole game pretty much until it got to the 9th inning and they brought in Shohei Ohtani himself to close it out. Now, this was pretty incredible because Shohei Ohtani is going to go down as one of the greatest players in MLB history, and his main partner in crime in regular season baseball when he plays for the Angels is none other than Team USA captain Mike Trout. Both of these players are going to go down as absolute icons, gods of baseball. But on Tuesday night, they ended up facing each other in a clash of titans. This was straight out of a Hollywood movie. This was straight out of an anime. After Ohtani got 2 outs on a quick double play, Mike Trout went to the dish, down a run, 2 outs for the last out of the tournament. I mean, Jesus, you couldn't script it better than that. Ohtani managed to get the count to a full 3-2 count, pounding Trout with 100-mile-an-hour heat. Until it happened, Ohtani fanned him with a dirty, dirty slider, and America slunk off, losing the World Baseball Classic yet again. Well, whatever, man. Who even cares about the World Baseball Classic anyway? But seriously, this was an amazing, dramatic way to end a crazy tournament. And now these two guys have to go be teammates again. And now they can prepare for another disappointing season of Angels baseball. It remains to be seen whether Ohtani will be giving Trout shit for this just for the rest of their careers or for the rest of their lives. Number 1, the Final Four underdogs. March Madness has been even more mad than it usually is this year. We don't have a single top 3 seed in the Final Four for the first time in the history of this tournament. It's coming down to UConn, San Diego State, Miami, and freaking Florida Atlantic, just like absolutely nobody predicted. As I alluded to earlier, the UConn Huskies managed to crush Gonzaga in the Elite 8 by 28 points to breeze into the Final Four. Of all 4 of these teams, it would be by far the lamest if UConn won. They've already won 4 titles. Nobody else in this tournament has even made it to the Final Four before. So, boo UConn. All 3 of the other teams are making their Final Four debuts. Hell, Florida Atlantic and San Diego State had never even made it past the Sweet 16 before this year. UConn will be playing the Miami Hurricanes, the second most successful of the remaining programs, and the only other team who've even made it to the Elite 8 in their history before this year. Miami's run has been very impressive. They dispatched the number 1, the number 2, and the number 4 seeds on their side of the bracket. Sure, they might have gotten a little bit lucky against Texas, who were missing their best player, Dylan Disu, due to injury, but there was nothing lucky about their win over Houston. In other words, Miami had to make it through the entire state of Texas to get this far. If Miami beats UConn, we are guaranteed to have a new champion in college basketball, so go Canes! San Diego's Aztecs have been extremely impressive, playing lockdown defense to get past the overall number 1 seeded Alabama Crimson Tide. After that, the Aztecs prevailed in a rock fight in the Elite Eight against the Creighton Blue Jays. Winning pretty or ugly doesn't really matter at this point of the tournament. All wins count the same, and after their amazing defensive performance, especially by elite rim protector Nathan Menza, they have become the first team in the history of the Mountain West Conference to make it to the Final Four. I tried to congratulate Mensa, but he blocked me on Twitter. FAU have knocked out Tennessee and Kansas State in their Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games, proving that history, pedigree, and tradition mean absolutely nothing in March Madness. Although Tennessee are traditionally choke artists, so maybe not nothing. Regardless, the fact that one of the spots in the final is definitely going to either San Diego State or Florida Atlantic when neither team has ever made it past the Sweet 16 before is fucking awesome. Long live March Madness. The Final Four will be on Saturday with the championship game on Monday night. Good luck to everyone except UConn. UConn's definitely going to ruin this, aren't they? Ugh. Next week will be another Tuesday episode to make sure we can get you the tail end of March Madness, as well as another week of NBA and NHL nonsense, the return of club football, the start of baseball season, and Red Bull Racing's next 1-2 finish in the Australian Grand Prix. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.